Daniel Brooks had spent the last 3 years rebuilding his life. By day, he repaired cars in a small garage on the edge of the city. By night, he helped his 12-year-old daughter, Emma, with homework and dreamed of giving her a better future. Most people saw him as an ordinary mechanic. Daniel preferred it that way. Very few people knew anything about the life he had left behind. One Monday morning, a black luxury SUV stopped outside his garage. A woman wearing an elegant navy suit stepped out. Behind her stood a massive bodyguard, nearly 6'5", with broad shoulders and a serious expression. The woman introduced herself. "I'm Victoria Hayes, CEO of Hayes Automotive." Daniel nodded politely. "What can I do for you?" Victoria pointed toward a black luxury SUV parked outside. "It won't start. My dealership couldn't find the problem." Daniel opened the hood and began inspecting the engine without saying much. Within a few minutes, he found a loose ground connection hidden beneath a wiring harness. He tightened the connection. The engine started instantly. Victoria looked surprised. "That took you less than 5 minutes." Daniel smiled. Sometimes the smallest problem causes the biggest headache. She handed him the payment and turned to leave. Then she noticed the old pickup truck parked beside the garage. She smiled sarcastically. "So that's what you drive?" Daniel nodded. "It gets me where I need to go." Victoria laughed loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "My bodyguard's watch costs more than that truck." Several customers looked over. Daniel remained calm. Victoria continued. "You seem strong. But appearances can be deceiving." She looked at her bodyguard. "Mark. I bet this mechanic thinks he could handle you." Mark smiled politely. "I don't think that's necessary, ma'am." Victoria laughed. "Come on. It'll be entertaining." Daniel calmly wiped the grease from his hands. "I'm not interested in proving anything." Victoria folded her arms. "That's what people say when they're afraid." The crowd outside the garage slowly grew larger. Emma quietly stepped outside and stood beside her father. She looked worried. "Dad." Daniel smiled reassuringly. "It's okay." Mark stepped forward. "I don't want any trouble." Daniel nodded. "Neither do I." Victoria looked impatient. "So neither of you is going to do anything?" Daniel looked at Mark for a moment. Then he noticed something. A small tattoo on Mark's wrist. Daniel's expression changed. Very quietly, he asked. "3rd Battalion?" Mark froze. His eyes widened. "How do you know that?" Daniel rolled up the sleeve of his work shirt. On his forearm was the exact same battalion insignia. The crowd fell silent. Mark stared at Daniel in disbelief. There was only one way a mechanic could know that symbol. And if his suspicion was correct, the quiet single dad standing in front of him wasn't an ordinary mechanic at all. Mark's eyes remained fixed on the tattoo. His confident expression disappeared. He took one slow step closer. "You served in 3rd Battalion?" Daniel nodded. "A long time ago." Mark swallowed hard. "What's your name?" "Daniel Brooks." For a moment, Mark didn't move. Then he quietly said, "No. It can't be." Victoria frowned. "What are you talking about?" Mark looked at her. "Ma'am. I think I know who he is." Victoria crossed her arms. "He's a mechanic." Mark slowly shook his head. "No. He used to be one of the finest combat instructors in our battalion." Daniel sighed. "That was years ago. I left that life behind." The crowd whispered among themselves. One customer pulled out his phone. Another mechanic stared in disbelief. Victoria laughed. "A combat instructor? This man Mark looked directly at her. I'm serious. I trained under him. He could end a fight before most people even realized it had started. Daniel interrupted calmly. Mark. None of that matters anymore. I fix engines now. Mark smiled respectfully. Maybe. But you taught us that real strength is knowing when not to fight. Emma looked at her father with surprise. You never told me any of this. Daniel smiled. It wasn't important. Victoria wasn't convinced. If you're really that skilled, prove it. Daniel shook his head. I don't fight for entertainment. Victoria smirked. So the legend refuses? Mark turned toward her. Ma'am, please.
Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Enjoy the video.
You don't understand. But Victoria ignored him. She looked at the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen. I'll offer this mechanic $10,000 if he can put my bodyguard on the ground. The crowd gasped. Phones were now recording from every angle. Daniel looked at Emma. She quietly whispered. You don't have to do this, Dad. Daniel smiled. I know. He turned toward Mark. What do you think? Mark respectfully nodded. Only if it's a demonstration. No anger. No injuries. Daniel extended his hand. Agreed. The two men walked into the open space in front of the garage. The crowd formed a circle around them. Victoria smiled confidently. She was certain her elite bodyguard would win easily. She had no idea. The lesson Mark was about to receive was the very same lesson Daniel had taught him years ago. Daniel and Mark stood facing each other in the middle of the garage. Neither man raised his fists. Neither looked angry. The crowd waited in complete silence. Victoria folded her arms confidently. Whenever you're ready. Mark nodded respectfully. Permission to begin, sir. Daniel smiled. You don't need my permission anymore. You've earned your own. Mark took a careful step forward. He reached for Daniel's shoulder in a controlled training move. Before anyone could blink, Daniel shifted his weight. He gently redirected Mark's arm, stepped to the side, and used Mark's own momentum against him. In less than 2 seconds, Mark lost his balance. He landed safely on one knee. Daniel immediately offered his hand. Good balance. You almost adjusted in time. The entire crowd stood frozen. Nobody had expected the match to end that quickly. Mark looked up at Daniel with a smile. Still faster than I remember. He accepted Daniel's hand and stood. Then, to everyone's surprise, Mark saluted him. I told you. He's still the best instructor I've ever trained under. The crowd erupted into applause. Several mechanics shook their heads in disbelief. One customer whispered. That wasn't luck. That was pure skill. Victoria couldn't believe what she had just seen. No. Do it again. Mark calmly shook his head. There won't be another demonstration. You asked if he could put me on the ground. He already did. Victoria looked frustrated. You let him win. Mark's expression became serious. No, ma'am. He controlled the entire movement. If this had been a real fight, I would have been down before I even understood what happened. Emma smiled proudly. She had never seen this side of her father. She quietly asked, Dad, why did you stop teaching? Daniel looked at her for a moment. Because after your mother passed away, you needed a father more than the world needed another instructor. Emma hugged him tightly. I never knew. Daniel smiled. I never wanted you to carry my past. Just then, one of the people recording the demonstration walked over. Mr. Brooks. I uploaded the video. It's already getting thousands of views. Another mechanic checked his phone. It's spreading everywhere. The comments are calling you the mechanic who dropped the bodyguard in seconds. Victoria stared at the growing crowd. For the first time, she realized she hadn't embarrassed Daniel. She had accidentally revealed his extraordinary past to the entire city. And within the hour, someone from Daniel's old life would see that video, and arrive at the garage with an offer that could change everything. Later that afternoon, the video had spread across social media. Millions of people had watched the calm mechanic gently put a highly trained bodyguard on the ground in seconds. But the comments weren't praising the takedown. They were praising Daniel's attitude. He hadn't celebrated. He hadn't humiliated Mark. He had simply helped him back to his feet. That single moment earned more respect than the demonstration itself. Inside the garage, Daniel was replacing brake pads on an old pickup truck as if nothing had happened. Emma looked at her phone. "Dad. The video just passed 5 million views." Daniel smiled without looking up. "That's nice." She laughed. "You really don't care, do you?" "I care about paying the bills. The internet doesn't repair engines." A black SUV slowly pulled into the parking lot. This time, it wasn't Victoria. An elderly man stepped out wearing a simple navy jacket. Mark immediately recognized him. He stood straight. General Robert Mitchell. Daniel looked up from the truck. For the first time all day, he looked genuinely surprised. The retired general walked over with a warm smile. "It's been a long time, Daniel." Daniel shook his hand. "Almost 13 years. The general looked around the garage. "So this is where you disappeared?" Daniel nodded. "I chose a quieter life." Emma looked confused. "Dad, who's he?" Daniel smiled. "He was my commanding officer." The general laughed. "And the best instructor I ever had." Victoria had returned to apologize when she noticed the retired general. She quietly stood near the entrance. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The general turned toward Daniel. "I didn't come because of the video. I came because I have a job only you can do." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I'm retired." "I know. But this isn't military." The general opened a folder. Inside were photographs of a new vocational training center under construction. "We're opening a national academy for veterans who want to become mechanics, engineers, and technicians. We need someone to lead it." Daniel closed the folder. "I'm not interested in titles." The general smiled. "I wasn't offering you a title. I was offering you the chance to change lives." Daniel remained silent. Emma gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Dad. You've always taught people. Maybe it's time to do it again." Daniel looked around his small garage. Then at Mark. Then at the young apprentices working nearby. For the first time in years, he wondered if his experience could help more people than just the customers who walked through his garage door. Victoria quietly spoke. "I came here to apologize. But after hearing all this, I realize I judged you by your clothes, your garage, and your old truck." Daniel smiled politely. "We all judge too quickly sometimes." Victoria nodded. "I won't make that mistake again." Just then, Daniel's phone rang. He answered. After a few seconds, his expression became serious. The general asked, "What happened?" Daniel slowly lowered the phone. "Someone broke into my garage last night. They didn't steal any money. They only took one thing. My old military journal." Daniel frowned. Whoever took it wasn't looking for memories. They were looking for something hidden inside. Daniel locked the garage and looked around carefully. Nothing else was missing. Not the cash. Not the tools. Not even the expensive diagnostic equipment. Only one item had disappeared. His old military journal. General Mitchell frowned. Who knew you still had it? Daniel thought for a moment. Almost no one. Mark stepped forward. Then this wasn't a random burglary. It was targeted. Emma looked worried. Dad, what was inside that journal? Daniel hesitated. It wasn't really a journal. It was a field notebook. I wrote down every lesson I learned during my years as an instructor. The techniques. The leadership principles. The training methods. But there was something else. The general looked at him. The coordinates? Daniel nodded. Years earlier, during a disaster relief mission, Daniel's unit had hidden a sealed military equipment container until it could be recovered. The location had never been made public. Daniel had encoded the coordinates inside his notebook so he would never forget them. Without the code, the numbers meant nothing. But in the wrong hands, they could become valuable. Just then, Mark's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Daniel. I think I found your thief. He turned the phone around. A security camera from a nearby gas station showed a man loading a notebook into a black sedan. General Mitchell immediately recognized him. That's Victor Kane. A former soldier. He was dismissed years ago for stealing military equipment. Daniel's expression hardened. If Victor has the notebook, he'll eventually realize there's a code inside. Emma asked. Can he decode it? Daniel smiled. Not without knowing the key. General Mitchell nodded. But once he realizes he can't solve it, he'll come back for you. That evening, exactly as Daniel predicted, a phone call came. The voice on the other end was calm. I have your notebook. Daniel replied. What do you want? Victor laughed. I want the code. Daniel remained silent. Victor continued. Meet me tomorrow morning. Come alone. If you don't, you'll never see your notebook again. The call ended. Emma looked frightened. Dad. You're not actually going, are you? Daniel smiled reassuringly. I have to. Mark stepped forward immediately. Then you're not going alone. General Mitchell nodded. Neither of you are. The next morning would decide everything. Not with fists. Not with weapons. But with the truth hidden inside one old notebook that everyone believed was just a collection of memories. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the abandoned warehouse exactly on time. The notebook wasn't what worried him. It was the man holding it. Victor Kane stepped out from the shadows. He held Daniel's old military journal in one hand. You came alone. Daniel smiled calmly. I said I'd come. I never said I was alone. At that moment, General Mitchell and Mark stepped out from behind a nearby truck. Victor laughed. I expected that. He tossed the notebook onto a table. I've spent all night trying to decode those numbers. They make no sense. Daniel nodded. Because they're not coordinates. Victor frowned. What? Daniel opened the notebook. The numbers are references. They point to leadership lessons. The actual location only exists. He smiled. Inside my memory. Victor realized he had stolen the wrong thing. The notebook had never contained the real secret. It only reminded Daniel of what he already knew. Victor lowered his head. So I risked everything. For nothing. Daniel looked at him calmly. You stopped believing that skill had value. You started chasing shortcuts. That's where you lost. Just then, police vehicles arrived outside the warehouse. Victor didn't resist. He quietly handed the notebook back to Daniel. I'm tired of running. The officers escorted him away peacefully. A week later, the National Veterans Technical Academy officially opened. Hundreds of former service members filled the auditorium. General Mitchell stepped onto the stage. Today, we're introducing the Academy's first director. He smiled toward Daniel. A man who taught soldiers with discipline. And now teaches civilians with kindness. The audience stood and applauded. Daniel walked to the podium. He looked across the room before speaking. I've repaired thousands of engines. But I've learned something. It's easier to fix a machine than to rebuild someone's confidence. The room became silent. So this academy won't just teach mechanics. It will teach patience, responsibility, and respect. Because those qualities build better people, not just better engineers. The audience erupted into applause. After the ceremony, Victoria Hayes approached Daniel. She smiled warmly. When I first met you, I judged you because of your old truck. Daniel laughed. And now? Victoria extended her hand. Now I judge people by their character. Daniel shook her hand. I'm glad we both learned something. Emma walked over carrying a framed photo. It showed Daniel, Mark, General Mitchell, and the Academy's first graduating class. She handed it to her father. You should hang this in your garage. Daniel smiled. No. It belongs here. He hung the photo on the Academy wall beneath a bronze plaque that read, True strength isn't proven by defeating others. It's proven by lifting others up. Months later, the Academy had trained hundreds of veterans for successful careers. Daniel still repaired cars on weekends. Not because he needed the money, but because it reminded him where his journey had begun. The mechanic everyone underestimated became the mentor everyone respected. And the CEO who once mocked him became one of the Academy's strongest supporters. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong. It's giving them a reason to become better.